Let's begin by singing hymn 460, He Leadeth Me. We'll sing all the verses. And for the last two verses, verse 3. Be seated. All right. Did you find that? There we go. There we go. Miss Cannon, could you just put it all the way to the beginning of overcoming marriage problems? And I'll just review what we did last week, and then we'll take off from there. Suggestions for maintaining a happy Christian marriage. So number 1, adopt and implement the biblical pattern for marriage. Marital happiness and success comes from following the biblical pattern. That should be a given, shouldn't it? But I don't know if we always try to bring our minds back to the Scripture and how God has ordained for marriage to work and to look at the roles of marriage and to be committed to them. The Scripture does have plenty to say about the husband and wife relationship. And you can be sure that if you will follow the biblical pattern, you will have success. True? Yes. You will. Okay. Sin is always a factor. We talked about marriage as putting two depraved people in close proximity. There's going to be some problems along the way, but if you follow the pattern, you'll have a good marriage. So we talked about then resolving to follow several basic commitments. So not only adopting the biblical pattern, but commitments to the pattern, several basic commitments to that pattern. First and foremost, Christ must be the center. God must be the center of marriage, and agree to follow biblical principles pertaining to your marriage again. Believe that He is the solution to all your marriage problems. The Bible does have everything that pertains to life and godliness, and so all of life we can find biblical solutions to problems and patterns for how we are to live. So we're thankful that God has given us, if you will, a blueprint for this. And then leave your original family, cleave to your spouse, and weave together these three aspects: the spiritual, the emotional, and the physical relationship. All of those areas need attention, and all three of these are so important. Strive to have unity in all of these areas. And we talked about the spiritual would be first. You want a young couple that's considering getting married, we want them to have a spiritual basis for their relationship, and that it would start that way, and that would remain strong throughout marriage. Of course, understanding that marriage is between one man and one woman, and until death separates them. Divorce happens, but God hates divorce. It's not something that He wants to see. Divorce is certainly against the biblical pattern, and I would say in all cases, no matter what problems may be leading to divorce, a couple should seek reconciliation. That should be the goal. Let's reconcile. Let's keep this marriage together. We said protect and cherish the one flesh relationship, the physical relationship of marriage. Intimacy in marriage is pure, it's honorable. Inside marriage, outside, though, it's sinful and destructive. When we talk about patterns, the husband must lead. So men, husbands, lead. Be the leaders in the home. And then ladies, let them lead. But men, your job is to love and to protect your wife, to provide for her and your family, and be a spiritual leader. I'm finding in our Christian community that most dads are good at being providers, but I don't know that most are good at being spiritual leaders. And it's just a matter of maybe getting caught up in the daily grind of life, that I work and I provide. So I'm doing my job as a husband, but we must be spiritual leaders. A lot of men become passive, and responsibility is not always upheld, and we talked about this before. If there is a vacuum, women will fill it, and but men should be the leaders of their home. Wives, let them lead, submit, be a companion, a completer, a helper, and strive for virtue as a Christian woman. We got some wonderful things we can learn from Proverbs 31, but there's more than that, just having godly character. And then we said children, if present, must be submissive to their parents. A lot of marriages are, there's problems in a lot of marriages because husband and wife aren't on the same page as to how to raise the children. That's going to be a huge problem. Then there's homes where the children are the center of it. They're not to be the center of it. The center of the marriage is to be obviously Christ, and then the husband and wife relationship comes first. So that's where we left off. And so we had 1, adopt and implement the biblical pattern. 2, resolve to follow basic commitments. And now 3, work on communication skills. Open, honest communication is necessary for maintaining healthy relationships. Stubbornness, intolerance, narrow-mindedness hinder open communication, and they create conflict. Did you know that men and women communicate differently? I say that with a smile, right? Did you know that men and women are different? It's silly that I would say that, but we live in a society, our Christian community knows they're different, but isn't it sad to see how this is in question today? Men and women are different by design. God made us different, and if we embrace those differences and those we work together as husband and wife, that can lead again to a good and healthy marriage. How do you think? Let's have some participation here this morning. Wow. This morning. This evening. It is morning somewhere. Thank you. I like her approach. That's good. How do you think, let's talk about, let me get your input. How do you think, what are the differences in the way that men and women communicate? So you might say, men communicate this way. Women communicate this way. Jim?
I'll go for an easy one. Directions.
Directions?
A guy will go by street names and so many miles and tenths of a mile to the next thing. Here's a lady's directions. Do you know where that beautiful mountain laurel bush used to be? And then,
Okay. All right. It would be good if we...
okay.
It would be good if we men would listen to their directions sometimes, because we think we got it, right? That's a quality of men. We think we know how to get there, and we're going to get there. And then if she seem to think we don't know how to get there, we can be stubborn and still try to figure it out, and then we end up further and further away from our destination, right? Okay,
I was not alluding to Mary Ann.
No, not at all. Okay, Les.
That was along the lines of what I was going to say. The men don't ask for directions.
Yeah, that's what we hear, and that's probably true. Men don't like to ask for directions because we got it. We know where we're going. Even when we don't know where we're going, we know where we're going, right? Yes, ma'am.
Men like to fix the problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
If women are like me, I like churn or I don't necessarily need you to solve it, at least right now.
Okay.
I want to churn and spit a while.
Okay. So if there is a problem, the guy's thinking about, the husband's thinking about how to solve this thing. And we're not maybe going to listen through the whole thing she has to say. In our minds, we're already fixing the problem. And that actually is one of the major differences between how men and women communicate. All right, what else? What about emotion?
Oh, ladies.
Are ladies more emotional in communication? You think so? Let's take a poll. How many of you think women are more emotional in their communication? Okay, right. I think it's almost unanimous, if not, right?
I think they're better listeners, too.
You think women are better listeners? How many of you would agree with that? I think so. And that goes back to why men aren't, because we're going to have the solution in our head. We don't need to listen. We've heard enough. Okay, good. Yes, Marianne.
Instead of listening, they're thinking about what they want to say.
Okay. Yeah, and that can go both ways, right? When there's an argument, we're both thinking about our case. instead of listening, right? So you're right, that happens. So women tend to be more emotional. That's true. Who's more verbal, men or women?
Women.
Women are more verbal. This is great. This is the way God made women. So it's by his design. This is a good thing. So don't take offense, women, when we say that women are more emotional in communication. They're more verbal. They're actually more detail-oriented, and they're relational. So how are men different? Just say less to all of that. In other words, men are less emotional. They are less verbal. They're more big picture oriented than detail oriented. And they want to provide solutions instead of just talking about the problems. But guys, you got to listen. She wants to talk about the problem. She wants you to know every aspect of the problem. And what we need to do is be patient and listen. Okay? Ladies, sometimes, for you can say, okay, I actually have clearly communicated the problem. What more could I say? But instead of, going at it 15 different ways, okay? That would help then. So understand, make room for those differences, and adopt realistic expectations concerning communication. Complaints, criticism, sarcasm, and insults, of course, will undermine relationships. So we all should communicate in a way that builds up and does not tear down. So we got to be careful about our words. Our word choice is important. So communication. Number 4, strive to get along with the in-laws and extended family. For young couples, really for any age of a couple, it's not advisable to live with in-laws. So if you can avoid that, and that happens every once in a while, families try to help each other through difficulties, but if at all possible, of course, living with in-laws is not the ideal situation. And when you look at leave and cleave, that would tell you not to live permanently. And why doesn't living with in-laws work well? What do you think? Why does that generally not work well? What happens? Meddling. What? The meddling, yes. Meddling certainly can occur. What else do you think? Jim?
They have their own ways. The in-laws would have their own ways and set patterns, and the younger couple want to establish theirs.
Right,
It's just human nature.
right. And the older ones think that their way is the right way,
And it's their home.
and it's their home. Good. Suzanne, were you going to say something?
I'm thinking about different stages of life and how that, sometimes that is really true. As my great-grandmothers became more elderly, they lived with my grandmother, and I do remember that.
Right,
And we had several generations
right.
very close.
Mhm.
But young couples, it can be a problem because you've got basically, instead of 2 parents, 4 parents for the little kids. If they have kids, it's just the grandparents become like parents as well.
Right, right. And no offense if there's extended families living together. There are times when that's helpful, it's needed. It shouldn't be permanent. If at all possible, don't live with in-laws. What do parents, especially mothers, do if their adult children are living with them? What do parents, especially mothers, what's the tendency to do? To continue parenting.
Yeah.
So Dana and I, when we visit my son Kyle and Kaylee, we don't interfere. Sometimes we think, I wish they'd do that differently, because it's not our way, But we realize it's their marriage. God put them together. They're young. They're figuring things out. We didn't have everything figured out when we were young. So not to meddle. Whoever said that, that was a good word. Who said that? Metal. Okay. So moms especially, they want to keep parenting. New families resent the intrusion of in-laws. Privacy is lacking in those situations. Okay. Certainly don't criticize in-laws because the child of the in-laws will resent it, right? Don't make anyone take sides in a conflict. Avoid taking sides in a conflict. What about communicating important news? Communicate important news, just don't air private problems, okay? Parents want to know news, they want news. Should be a joy to share certain news, but not problems. Don't communicate private problems. How about borrowing money? It's really not a good idea to borrow money from family, whichever way it goes. Okay? Again, there may be times of emergency where families will help each other out, but ought to be very careful about that. Why is that? Why should you really avoid borrowing money from in-laws? What's the principle about when you loan money, Charlie?
The Bible says the borrower is servant to the lender.
Right. And
You owe them something.
right.
Sometimes more than the money.
Right. Yep. And again, just be careful about it. Dana's parents, when we were very newly married and needed a car, they loaned us a small amount of money. It didn't take too long to pay it off, and it kind of gave us a start with that. So just parents, be wise. All right. Let's see. Women especially seem to need the comforts of mom and dad. So if they're living together, that can be an issue. We don't want to put roadblocks between a daughter and her parents, and so forth. So, all right, so that's 4. Number 5, agree on financial matters. Agree on financial matters. I don't think you would be surprised to know that financial disagreements are in the top. If you list marriage problems, financial disagreements usually are in the top 3. How do you know that, Pastor Rob? Well, I looked in preparation of this, and I'll share some of that with you. So financial disagreements are often leading causes of marriage conflicts and are in the leading causes of divorce. Couples that just haven't agreed on finances, or there's debt. Financial debt leads to marriage problems. So the key is simply live within your means. Live within your means, save for the future, but don't be materialistic. Okay, that kind of goes along with our life group discussions this morning. Jesus is saying, I'll take care of the material things. You seek first the kingdom of God and righteousness, and I will add everything else. So don't be materialistic. Decide who will control the accounts, pay the bills, do the banking and the investing. Review the finances together periodically. I think in cases where the wife has some skills with money, maybe she's the one to handle the accounts. She may be more knowledgeable about budgeting. She may be more careful, but I tend to think that men, if you'll take the task on of being the main money manager, you'll take some stress off your wife. So you may have heard me talk about this couple once before, but one of the finest teachers I ever had, his wife she couldn't control spending. She was out of control in the way she spent money. They had credit cards. she maxed out 2 credit cards. And so she kept the checkbook, she wrote the check, she paid the bills, she had the credit cards. And I knew this was leading to him possibly not being able to continue to be a Christian school teacher because of the income that he had. And I kept trying to tell him, you just need to take that over. You just need to tell your wife, I'm taking over the management of our money. And I said, you know, for one thing, maybe there's some stress or pressure on her that you could relieve her of if you'll start paying the bills. Well, he definitely felt the stress. But anyway, it ended up that he, to this day, he at least has 2 jobs. That was like 15 years ago or more, 20 years ago. And this poor guy still has 2 jobs because his wife can't control her spending. So share information, agree on how much to donate to church and charities, seek to be content with what you have, avoid debt whenever possible, be thrifty shoppers, follow a plan. Money can make life easier, but money can't buy happiness, and money can't buy a happy marriage. And so if you'll not be materialistic, you'll live within your means. You and your wife can agree to that. There's less stress in the marriage. All right, hold realistic expectations for each other. There's marriage problems when one has a high expectation, an unrealistic expectation for their spouse. Each spouse should adjust to the weaknesses and blind spots of the other, right? We all have weaknesses, every one of us. If you have a weakness, work on it so that it's not as weak. But if you see a weakness in your spouse, understand it as a weakness, adjust to it. Certainly don't demand perfection, not only in your spouse or yourself. Don't demand perfection in yourself. Appreciate the differences that you have and try to be as tolerant and flexible as possible with each other. Okay? Try to be optimistic. It's an interesting one. Who likes to live? Who would like to live with Eeyore? Isn't Winnie the Pooh great? I remember reading those, watching them when they were on TV. You know, Winnie the Pooh. And what makes that so great is just the personalities of the characters. And man, they're just so in your face, right? Well, don't be an Eeyore. Always pessimistic. Oh no. Always, concerned about things. Negative, pessimistic, melancholy. That is hard to live with. Try to be happy, enjoy the blessings that God provides. Work to make every day a good one. Make the atmosphere of your home inviting, warm, and comfortable. If you're negative all the time, that's going to hit your spouse. It's going to be a drag on your spouse if you're negative all the time. So try to be optimistic. Take time for rest and recreation. Find relaxing things to do together. I really believe this. Find things to do together and find things that you'll do alone. Okay? Mix that up and then find things that you will take interest in your spouse's interest. And I think if you'll combine all that together, you'll have a good time together. So Dana will go to breakfast with me on the motorcycle when the weather's good. I like the motorcycle. She enjoys going for breakfast, but she doesn't want to be on that thing as much as I do. So sometimes she'll go to breakfast with me on the motorcycle, sometimes a ride. But she also lets me do that by myself. She's not upset that a couple times a summer I just go out and I start riding the bike. I think this summer she went shopping with Elise because she likes to shop. She doesn't spend much money. She's actually a hunter. Men are usually hunters, but Dana is a really good hunter. And so she went out with Elise. She was doing what she enjoyed. I went out on the motorcycle, and I didn't know where I was going. I just rode. I found myself in your former territory, Burke Mountain and Lake Willoughby, and I didn't realize how far away from home I was. So finally I stopped and I looked at my watch and I said, wow, it's going to take me a while to get home. So I texted her and said, won't be home until such and such a time. So this weekend I took her and the rest of the family to Plattsburgh. So we got up a little bit early. You know, she knows this. The only thing I like to go to Plattsburgh for is the chicken. Right? You know what I'm talking about? But that's something she likes to do. She likes the chicken too, but she also likes the stores. There's some better stores over there than we have over here. So, you know, some of the times I'll go into the stores with her. Sometimes I'll say, no, I'm just going to sit in the car. I brought my tablet with me. I could study a little bit. And so enjoy doing things together. Take interest in your spouse's interest. But let them do the things that they like, okay? I like NFL football. Okay, I'll be honest with you. My only sports vice is NFL football. Now, I have a friend. His sports vice is every professional sports. Okay, so he has to watch the entire Major League Baseball season, the entire NFL season, the entire, you name it, hockey season. So he's always got the TV on with sports. And I'm sure it drives his wife nuts. But here's what I love about Dana. She lets me have the one season. So Sunday afternoon, that's a relaxing time for me. Not very relaxing this year, if you know what team. My team won today. They won the first pick in the NFL draft because they had the worst record in football. So I'm saying we won. We won the first pick in the draft. It might sound silly to you, but Dana lets me enjoy that. Okay? Now, if I had sports on, you know, every season, I'm sure that would be annoying. Okay? Yes, it's true. The men tend to dominate the television, but we have to be sensitive. So occasionally, okay, not very often, I'll watch the Hallmark movie. But she kind of watches it to make fun of it. Because they're pretty sappy, right? They're super, super sappy. But anyway, I digress here. Just learn how to enjoy one another, rest together, recreation together, but also allowing your partner to do the things that they enjoy. Try not to take one another for granted. That can certainly happen. I know what I have. I know what God gave me. And you probably heard me say this before. Pastor Harding, you know, my former pastor, he has said to me on more than one occasion, if he sees Dana with me, he'll look at me and say, Rob, I don't know how you did that. I don't know how you convinced that girl to marry you. He said, but she in part is your sanctification. He lets me know that I married up. I married beyond my abilities here. And I know that. I'm very, some of you guys, you'll agree with that in your relationship too. But I tell the young people, choose wisely. You know, make sure you choose wisely. I think apart from your decision for salvation, the most important decision a person makes is who they marry. It can make you or break you. And so choose wisely. Don't allow the routine of daily living take the joy and excitement out of your marriage. If there's a rut in your marriage, try to get out of that rut. And now I got to move quickly. Number 10, avoid potential problems in marriage. Like what? When marriage counselors are asked to list the main problems of marriage, there's some ones that come up: communication failures, intimacy issues, money, finance disagreements, and infidelity of one or both of the partners. Okay? And the Bible addresses each one of those. So if we're again committed to the biblical pattern, we don't allow these things to threaten our relationship. That's important. So what do you think? Let me hear from you. What do you think are the leading causes of marital problems? Because I went to the source of all information, truth, and knowledge. Okay, I'm about to joke now. I looked this up. What are the leading causes of marital problems? I went to the source of all information, truth, and knowledge. You know what that is? Google. That's tongue in cheek. I say that to my students all the time. Well, let's go to the source of all information, truth, and knowledge. They know I'm joking. All right? So you tell me, what do you think would be on the list of leading causes of marital problems? We've identified a couple already, but what else do you think would go on the list? Marianne?
Not putting your spouse first.
Not putting your spouse first. Being selfish would be the negative way of saying that same thing, right? Do you think their selfishness in marriage leads to marital problems?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. And let's remember, we are selfish. You're selfish. I'm selfish. We have to fight that all the time. Okay? What else do you think causes of marital problems? Yes, Steve?
When you have a problem or an issue, you don't deal with it, you just let it build up and build up and build up, and pretty soon it's not such a little thing.
Okay, not dealing with the little things and then they become big things. All right. Dana?
Maybe trauma, like the death of a child or a disease, and not knowing how to deal with that, or
Yes.
spiraling downward because of it.
Yes, I've seen that on the list. Usually not near the top, but it is on the list. Yes, Jim?
Being in sales, I've been in a lot of different homes, and in some cases I've seen where the man of the house runs everything with an iron fist, like it's a dictatorship rather than a partnership.
Okay.
And
What
that's
else?
really sad, by the way.
It is.
Hating themselves.
It is. Charlie?
I think nowadays addictions are a big issue, whether it's drugs, alcohol, could be
Yes.
even recreation, or, could be food.
Yes.
Almost, I read somewhere that if you name something, somewhere could be addicted to it.
Right. Yes, addiction, for sure. All right, here's what I found. A website, divorce.com. Sort of sad. We have a website, divorce.com. Now, I don't know how scientific this is, but if you look at different lists, you'll find a top 10. They might just, be in different order. Lack of communication. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. Communication comes up later. Lack of commitment. People get married and they have a lack of commitment? Yes, lack of commitment. Infidelity, relationships outside of marriage. What's called irreconcilable differences. Almost had a hard time pronouncing that. Differences, we just can't reconcile these differences. They're, or at least thinking they can't. And so we're going to have to separate divorce.
Pastor, don't you think most of those so-called irreconcilable differences relate to selfishness?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Related to selfishness. On the list was marrying too young. I was kind of surprised to see that. I mean, I can understand it, but I was sort of surprised that would be so high in the list. And young people aren't marrying young anymore. So, again, this is one website. I found this on. Number 5, money issues and debt. There it is, financial troubles. And then the one Charlie said, number 6, substance abuse, addictions, various addictions. The top addiction being alcohol addiction, but it can be other things. 7 on that list was communication problems. Inability to have children was on that list. Domestic violence. Having a child with significant problems, whether they're severe physical problems or emotional problems, will tear up a relationship. And then health problems for the one in the relationship. Lack of support from family. At the bottom of the list, number 13 was religious differences. It'd be a weird one to go into marriage with, but it does happen. So let me start to wrap this up. Avoid significant marriage differences. And then I will talk about these, because these are the ones I actually had in my notes. Addictions for sure. Alcohol, drugs, and there are other addictions. Pornography is a leading addiction to destroy a marriage. We're talking about society in general. Gambling. Sports addictions was there. So I said I only have one vice, only one season. 17 weeks. No, it's more like 20 with playoffs. So we're going to have Soup and Bowl. Did you catch that this morning? We're going to have a Soup and Bowl party. And the week is the week before the Super Bowl, and there's no NFL games. That's why we're having it that week. And then the next week's the Super Bowl, and please come to church. Okay, we don't change the time of our service. I probably won't preach my longest message that Sunday. We would joke with Pastor Harding. He'd say, Pastor, I know we're not going to do what other churches do. We're not going to cancel the service Sunday evening. But do you have to preach the longest message on that night? And he said, yeah, I have to preach long enough so that you guys miss the halftime show, because that's an abomination unto the Lord. And that's actually pretty true. Don't watch the halftime show. All right. So addictions. The solution, make every effort to overcome the addiction. Get help. And if your spouse thinks you have a problem, you do have a problem. Even if she just thinks you have a problem, right? You have a problem because she believes you do, and you probably do. Okay? You have a problem that you don't see the same way. And are we often blind to our own weaknesses? Absolutely. I don't have that problem. Well, yeah, you do. So believe your wife, believe your husband. And another major addiction today is pornography. That certainly will be a threat to marriage. Even in Christian homes, is that even in Christian homes? Absolutely. So take whatever steps are necessary to prevent that problem from gaining a foothold. Avoid unrealistic expectations. We already talked about that. One spouse may have this romanticized view of marriage. It doesn't take too many years of marriage where that generally goes away. Okay, right? There's not very many Prince Charmings out there, right? Not many Prince Charmings out there. Not many Wonder Womans out there, right? None of us are that way. So when we reveal ourselves less than perfect, just let us be less than perfect. I'm just being really practical about this. Don't let resentment set in. So the solution, recognize your own personal flaws and imperfections and work on them. You know what they are too. Don't just tell your wife, well, this is me. No. Work on your imperfections. You should work on them just so you can be all that you can be for the glory of God, but also for your wife and for your marriage. Recognize that your spouse will have their own set of imperfections and weaknesses. and align your expectations with reality. Okay? Young couples see this digitized image of the other sex and of marriage, and I think they do. They are then dissatisfied when they go into marriage. So they have to be careful about that. Try to be tolerant of minor irritations, quirks, and those kinds of things. Any of you will admit you have a quirkiness about you, and you just had to say, "What? That's weird. Why do I do that?" Okay, we all have that. Don't let that harm your marriage. Okay, this is personal, but let me just use it as an illustration. I have this idea of how you fold clothes. So early in marriage, I had this idea of how it has to be done a certain way. Well, Dana didn't do it that way. I'm not going in my dresser drawer. That's not how you fold that. You don't fold underwear that way. And I realized, how stupid is that? Your wife's doing your laundry and she's folding it for you. Be happy. Right? I'm the guy that folds my dirty laundry when I'm on a trip. So it's just one of those weird things. So I know that's personal. But isn't that a good illustration? Say, don't be silly about things. All right? I don't know if this is a good idea anyway, even for married couples. But if you share toothpaste, right? Does one person just squeeze the tube, and the other guy's like he's meticulously pushing the toothpaste up the tube and rolling it, putting a clip on it, and all that stuff. So if you share toothpaste and you're different that way, everyone just go to their own tube of toothpaste, right? It's like you're being silly, Pastor Rob. But aren't there? I mean, some of the silliest things can harm a relationship. Okay. So maybe that's why that's a good illustration, because it's just so silly. All right, well, wrap this up. Avoid overcommitment and fatigue, meaning your work situations, your jobs. If you have a couple, both husband and wife have full-time jobs, there's only so much you can do. Different projects and different responsibilities. Don't be overcommitted, overworked. You'll get exhausted. You'll have very little energy to invest in your marriage relationship. Okay? If Dana will let me tell this, she's like, now what is he going to say? We hadn't been married too long when we went to a couples retreat, and we were getting the teaching from whoever, I forget who the speaker was, but the speaker started speaking about the roles of a woman in marriage, and he was focusing on the care of the household, laundry and dishes and cleaning and those kinds of things, and seemed to really stress that. And we went back to this a couples retreat at a camp where we stayed in cabins. But anyway, we went back to our cabin, and Dana I could tell she was emotional. She was upset, and she looked at me, she said, "I'm not the wife that I should be." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "Well, the house isn't always as clean as it should be. If you come in my house right now, this woman, she keeps a clean house." And I'm thinking, what are you even talking about? Well, she said, "Well, you on the weekends you vacuum." I said, "Of course I vacuum." She said, "Well, I just don't think I don't remember exactly the words. You can correct me, Dana. But the idea was I must not be being a good helpmeet because I'm not doing all these tasks by myself in the home." And I looked at her and I said, "Honey, you're working full time. And right now, this is the way in which you're being a helpmeet. You're contributing, and we're in ministry together. We were both school teachers. This is how we were serving God. But when you work, teachers don't work 40 hours a week, right? So when you work 40 hours a week, you've got Saturday maybe for house cleaning, and I would help. I won't say I like vacuuming. She's like, oh, he likes it. That's the job I don't mind doing. I'll put it that way, vacuuming. So because I was vacuuming, that didn't fit with the message of the speaker, that she must not have been the housewife that she needed to be. So, well, yes, honey, you are. and I should help with household chores if you're working outside of the home, right? Makes sense. Okay. Yes.
I believe that if you share the household, you share in all the chores. We actually, I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal, but it makes for a happy marriage.
Oh, yeah.
We actually compete to see who will do something. Like, oh, you beat me to the sink. I was going to do that.
I'll do it, I'll do it.
Nice. Yep.
Plus, you know, it has benefits. My hands are soft and smooth.
Yes.
I could do a dish soap commercial.
There you go. All right, and then avoid significant character flaws. Dishonesty, greed, vanity, lack of personal discipline, and so avoid character flaws. Just, again, it goes back to your relationship with the Lord, having that right, and having Christ the center of your marriage, and this will be God-honoring. So, all right, we took up all the time. Please submit prayer requests via email. So email those to churchoffice@tbcvt.org. We really want to have this prayer prompter. We use it Wednesday nights, but I'd like these, we put them on the counter after we use them. We just need to pray for each other as a church. So if you're unable to come Wednesday night, you can still have access to the prayer prompter. And let's just pray for each other weekly. And in order to do that, I need you to email those requests. And so on the counter, you should find one from last Wednesday, January 4th. And it does a couple things. It helps us to save some time, that we're not taking up our whole prayer time with requests. But more importantly, that it's in writing, you can take it with you. Because we just announce the requests, sometimes we forget them within that prayer time. So please do that. That would be much appreciated. So just very quickly, let's close with prayer. But anything that's not on the prayer prompter for this past week that you want to mention?